Matthew, where'd you get that picture?
Oliver.
That's really funny. It makes me want to go do do. Like with the little hand. You're frozen. Are you frozen on purpose? I can do that too.
No, I'm just doing some.
Okay, just
Okay, I'm back.
9. I should have gotten yours. I'm so sorry, kids.
I saw it jump up.
Okay. All right, so it's just you and me for right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start. Okay. Do you have your book?
No, not
Okay, well, don't worry about it. You just listen. Okay.
Okay.
And if anybody else joins us, they can join us. But this is the lesson 12.7. Okay. So I have this drawn right here. You see this point right here?
Mm-hmm.
And this point right here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I want to find the distance between these two. If it was just straight flat, it would be easy. Like if I wanted to find the distance between these 2 points, it would be 4, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And if I wanted to do the distance between these 2 points, that would be 5, right? Is
Yes.
that right? Yeah. Okay. So when you're counting up and down, it's super easy. Okay. But when you're dealing with this, you are going to think of it in terms of a triangle. So we're going to bring this down here. Okay. And the difference between that point up here and that point down here, just on this side, is 3. Okay. Right? Because it went from here down to here, and there's just 3 spaces in between. Okay. And this, going this direction, is also 3. Now, what you've learned in the past is that 3 squared, let me put this forward, 3 squared plus 3 squared is equal to that distance squared, right? From the Pythagorean theorem.
Yes.
Okay. And so this happens to be the same. Usually they're not. So 9 plus 9 equals d squared. And this would be 18 equals d squared. And you would square root like this, right? Well, on this, we would find 9 in there, and then we'd pull it out, and we'd have, oh, I don't know why I put a 2 there. That's supposed to be a 3. 3 square root of 2 is your distance for that particular formula, or that particular thing. Well, they have just come up with a formula, okay? And the formula is this. And this is what everyone needs to be writing this down in their notes, okay? So basically you find the difference between one of the x's and the other x, you square it, and then you add that to the difference of the y's and square it, and you're taking the square root, okay? And this is equal to d. So we're going to go back to, let me see if I can find these 2 points for you. We're going to go back to right here. Okay. And I'm going to, instead of what we just did, I'm going to plug in these numbers. Okay. And it doesn't matter whether you call one of them x2 and the other one x1, as long as you keep it consistent. If this is 0.1 and this is 0.2, just keep these. This is x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, so we have it here. We get x2 minus x1. So this is 4 minus the 1. And it should start looking familiar to what we've already done. So 4 minus 1. Okay, and this is, don't forget this radical. And this is all under that radical. Okay, and then what do you get here? You get 9, and this is 9. You add them together, and you end up with this. Is this looking familiar with what we just did? And then pull out the perfect square, and we get 3 radical 2 is our distance. Okay, so it's the same concept as what we did over here when I showed you the triangle. That's where it's coming from. So you don't have to think about the triangle anymore, but some people like to know why or how the formula is derived. So that's the distance formula. This is the one that's on page 528. Okay, and you're plugging in numbers. Now the only problem is, let's say you don't have your homework right in front of you, do you, Matthew?
No.
Okay, let me see. Your homework is 2 through 12 evens. So let's look at one of them. I'm going to work one of them here, okay, and show you where you have to be careful. So 2 through 12 evens. Okay, we're going to just work the first one. It's got some negatives, so that's good. -3, -2, because you have to watch your signs. And in this case, everything is negative. Okay, and this is number 2. And I do expect all of your work to be shown. Okay, that's a maniacal laugh from your teacher. Yes. Okay, so if this is 0.1 and this is 0.2, okay, and you might want to label it. You don't have to label it as long as you keep it the same. Okay, so we're going to do the difference of the x's. So x is always that first number. So we're going to have to put in a -3. It's always minus. Okay, and then you put in your other number. Now notice how that was a negative anyway, right? Okay, don't think, well, because this is a negative, I don't have to put the minus. You have to. And you have to square it. This is a plus sign, because this is from the triangle thing where we're having the side squared plus the other side squared equals the hypotenuse squared. So we're going to do the y's or next. So because I did the -3 minus a -8, we're going to do the -2 minus a -2. Okay, and don't forget it's squared. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change my 2 negatives here. I'm going to change my 2 negatives here. Okay, what is -3 plus 8? Gives us 5. And don't forget the square. Okay, -2 plus 2 gives you what?
0.
Right, so we don't even have to mess with that. Okay, so we can just get rid of that, and don't forget this is the square root. Okay, some of y'all I'm seeing in your homework that you end up showing me this and then your answer is 25, but the square root of 25, no, I know what you're doing. This is what you're doing. I'm going to do it wrong and then I'm going to fix it, but I'm going to do it wrong down here because I want to make sure that y'all are fixing this. This is not equal to the square root of 5. Okay? It is equal just to the 5. So up here, when I'm doing this, my distance is 5. Okay? So that was number 2. Another thing I want to point out to you that it does go over is if you want to ever find a midpoint, we don't actually have this in our homework, but I want to go over it because it's something that going forward, it'd be good for you to have. So let's say I had, I have a couple people texting me. It's funny. You don't get any text whenever you're not busy, but when you're busy, you get text. Okay. So whenever you're dealing with 2 points and you wanted to find the midpoint in here, okay. And I want everyone writing these formulas down when you're doing this. So Matthew, when you're looking at your book later, just write these in your notes. And you might ask,
Okay.
why am I writing them in my notes? Because we're almost done. Well, you're doing this so your brain will retain some of it. Okay. So your midpoint formula is this formula. Okay. Let's see if I can. It's a big thing. Okay. You're going to take the average of your x's, and you have two x's. You have a point here and a point here. So this one has an x, this one has an x. Let me give you some values. Let's say this is 1, 4. Okay. And if that was 1, 4, let's say this is 4, 7. Okay. So we're going to find the midpoint of these 2 points. And the same thing for your y value. You find the average. And all you're doing is adding the two values together and dividing by 2. Sometimes it'll be a fraction. Okay. So 1 + 4 is 5. Good job, Matthew. And the notes are on. And then 5/2. I'm going to come over here so you can see this. 5/2 is not what you want to write. You want to write 2.5. Okay. You don't want to leave it in a midpoint. It's kind of like in class whenever I've said, when do you change improper fractions? Well, when you're measuring, really when you're measuring or you're doing word problems. And this is measuring as it's distance, okay? So this is our average of our x's, okay? And then I'm going to take my y, my 4 and my 7. We add them together, we get 11. And then you have, here, I'll put it over here. 11/2 is what, 5.5?
Yeah.
So my midpoint of these two is 2.5,
It's 8.
5.5. Okay. So that's another thing that this lesson goes over, that's an important detail that you'll need to know later on, but we'll go over it. It's not like you're going to depend on everything you remembering, but we will be going over this again in Algebra 1 next year. All right. So that's your lesson. Glad, Matthew, you could join us. Do you want to show us the kitten?
Yeah.
Ah, the kitten is in his lap. So this is our kitten. His name is Gato Part 2. Yeah. And he's about 2 months old. So we just got him on Sunday, right?
Yeah, Sunday afternoon.
Yep. All righty. Okay, I will be sending this to the class as a link. It will not be on public domain because Matthew's face will be on there. Although, Matthew, do you care if you're on there?
Not really.
Okay, so maybe I'll just do it in public. All right. Bye.